Pay Attention, Carter Jones by Gary D. Schmidt. Chapter 9. The Crease. Quote, "The crease is the playing area into which the batsman steps when he's about to protect his wicket." Unquote. I told you I've been to Australia, right? And how it rained tropical Australian thunderstorms almost every day, which my father said wasn't all that unusual. The last time he'd been to Australia, he said, it had rained every day. I went with my father the summer before 5th grade because we had some ancestors who were sent to the penal colonies in Australia in 17-something, and my father wanted to track them down for the family's history. Plus, we get to see places he'd seen just after college. That's the reason he gave when he told me we were going. I don't think that was the real reason. I think the reason was that my mother told him he should spend some time with me because of how it was after my brother Courier, I think she told him he had to do it, and she didn't care if he had to call in some favors from the army. I think she told him that she didn't give a flying leap about duty and crap like that. His son needed him. Our house has thin walls. Anyway, I think that's the reason we went to Australia. But it didn't matter why we went. I mean, Australia. I put the green marble in my pocket, and we went to the airport in a taxi, and we flew for a bazillion hours to Los Angeles, and then another bazillion hours to Australia, and in the middle of the night, we watched movies I don't think my mom would have let me watch if she'd been there. We landed in Sydney and got in a car with the steering wheel on the wrong side, like the eggplant, and drove out of the city on the wrong side of the road and came to the Blue Mountains, which didn't look blue at all. It was already tropical thunderstorming. But my father didn't care. He wanted to hike before we looked up ancestors, so we shouldered backpacks. His was a lot heavier than mine, and we climbed down to the valley floor. Small waterfalls all around us. Trees getting thicker and thicker. High rocks and long red layers of sandstone. The smell of wet earth and water and big leaves and damp moss and old bark and huge white flowers I'd never seen before. 1,000 feet down, we set off into the big trees, him humming Beethoven while we walked. And he could do whole symphonies even in the Australian tropical thunderstorm. Where we walked, we left deep tracks that filled with rainwater. It was hot. Sounds of water falling onto rocks. The screeching of white birds that flocked high up in the tall trees and stared down at us. Every so often a hunting call from something big, like a dinosaur maybe. Every so often something slithering in the low grass. Probably snakes, my father said. Every so often something scrambling through the underbrush. Probably little crocodiles, my father said. They didn't sound little. And then, in the late afternoon, the rain stopped and the sun sprang out from behind puff clouds, and we came to a clearing that gave away the whole valley. "Watch," said my father. The sunlight belted the leaves of the eucalyptus trees, and steam began to rise up and up and up, and no kidding, the air turned blue. Blue over the leaves, blue over the tallest trees, blue over the red rock formations, blue hovering everywhere, and then blue coming down onto us. I could almost hold my hand out and watch it turn blue. Blue. We saw it happen every afternoon, when the Australian tropical thunderstorm stopped and the sunlight hit the trees and their eucalyptus oils evaporated into the air and everything hovered blue. We were down in the valley for 5 days. We never saw another person the whole time. We were just there. My father and me. Just there. Just us. We didn't even talk that much. Hardly at all. It was so quiet I almost missed Annie and Charlie and Emily. And I held the green marble tightly. And now, walking with the butler in a white sweater and a white hat, carrying marshmallowy pads and huge gloves and a bat that wasn't really a bat, it's where I kind of wished I still was. We walked past the Ketchums, who were watering their azaleas, and who looked up and stared at us, past the Briggs's rhododendrons, past the Rockcastle's holly hedge, past the Kutcher's petunias. The Kutchers stared at us out the window, then stopped by Billy Colt's house, where he tried to tell his mother he was feeling sick because he ate too many apple tarts, but the butler told Mrs. Colt we'd be learning to play cricket, and she told Billy it was a wonderful opportunity, and he looked like such a little gentleman in his little white sweater and hat, and we walked 6 more blocks to Longfellow Middle School. "You look like such a little gentleman," I said. "Shut up," Billy Colt said. And I don't know where Billy Colt wished he was, but I could bet it wasn't on the Longfellow Middle School fields, where 3 pickup games were already going. 3 pickup games on the 3 baseball diamonds that had butted up against the red oval of the track, where the 8th grade varsity cross-country team was getting timed by Coach Krzyzowska, who was hollering like he was not a very happy coach. We crossed the track, hesitated, then followed the butler into the perfect green lawn of the Longmeadow Middle School football field, home of the Longfellow Middle School Minutemen, a lawn cut and watered and fertilized and worshipped by a whole team of landscapers, a lawn watched over like it was holy ground by Vice Principal Del Blanco, who was the football coach when he wasn't being the vice principal, a lawn upon which no 6th grader had ever stepped before. I was sweating. "This will do perfectly," said the butler. "Mr. Bowles Fitzpatrick, keep up, young Master William." Billy Colt was sweating too. We followed the butler to the center of the Longfellow Middle School football field. I turned around and looked at the baseball diamonds. One of the left fielders was looking our way. The butler took 3 long stakes out of his case and a wooden hammer. "Mr. Bowles Fitzpatrick, I said you can't." Mr. Butler pounded the first stake in. "Mr. Bowles Fitzpatrick, you really can't." And he pounded on the second, then the third. I turned around again. Most of the outfielders from all 3 diamonds were looking at us now. "Mr. Bowles Fitzpatrick," I said again. He reached into the case, pulled some stuff out, put it back again, and finally held up 2 short pieces of wood. "These are called the bales," he said. "Repeat after me, please. The bales." "The bales," we said, sort of helplessly. He laid them carefully across the tops of the stakes, and then, pointing at the stakes, the butler said, "These are called the stumps. Please repeat." "The stumps." "Young Master William, together the stumps and the bales are the wicket. You are standing in what is called the crease. A good cricketer stands in the crease to defend his wicket to the death. So, put on your pads. You'll have to lay the gloves aside for the moment. Yes, that's right. Put on the pads. You'll need to help him, young Master Carter. And then," rummaging about in the case again, "remove your hat and replace it with this." He handed Billy a black hat with something like a cage on the front. Billy tried it on. "No, that's not quite right. Let me help you." I looked around again. 2 of the pickup games had stopped to look at us. "All right, then," said the butler. "Young Master William, you take the bat and hold it by the handle, both hands. Yes. And now you'll stay here in the crease, and young Master Carter and I will take a bit of a walk." Billy Colt looked around behind him, and then at all the outfielders from the 3 pickup games, then back at us. "You're not going to leave me here," he said. "It is your wicket to defend to the death." Billy did sort of look like death was on his mind. "Now, young Master Carter, we walked 22 yards precisely. How nice that the yardage is so clearly marked." "The reason the yardage is so clearly marked is that this is the football field and we're not supposed to be in it." 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, the butler counted. He laid the case down again and took out 3 more stumps and 2 bales. "Presumably your family pays its city taxes?" he said, and he handed the bales to me and began to pound the first stump in. "Given such financial faithfulness, we might assume you may freely walk into a publicly owned school field." He pounded in the second stump. I turned around. All 3 games had stopped. They were looking at us. Coach Krzyzowska and the 8th grade varsity cross-country team were looking at us too. "I'm not sure everyone understands that," I said. "Then perhaps," said the butler, pounding on the 3rd stump, "a stronger emphasis on the study of civics and democracy is required at Longfellow Middle School." Coach Krzyzowska began walking toward us. Coach Krzyzowska did not look interested in a stronger emphasis on the study of civics and democracy. Behind Coach Krzyzowska came the entire 8th grade varsity cross-country team, 12 8th graders. They did not look like they were interested in a stronger emphasis on the study of civics and democracy either. I told you how in the Blue Mountains of Australia, my father and I were surrounded by screeching birds and hunting dinosaurs and slithering snakes and scrambling crocodiles. I think it might have been safer there than it was right now on the football field of Longfellow Middle School. End of chapter 10.